Okay, wow, everybody's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed this morning. We are storytellers. Think about that. The mic is off.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't hear this either.
Yep.
That's what I thought, not my imagination. I just
Try it now. Try it now.
Yes, it doesn't turn off anyways.
Does it
No
turn on?
button
There's
tray.
no
Talk now. There we go, I
Just
heard
talk.
it. There we go.
All right. We are storytellers. Think about that. We tell others about our life, our joys, our concerns, what happens to us, and how we feel about what happens to us. We like to think that what we say, the story that we tell, is what really happened. It is the truth. But here's a question for you. What if the stories you are telling is only an interpretation of the event? What if there's another story that can be told about the same event? What if we could change the story and in so doing change our lives? Let me give you an example. A couple of years ago, I went to Costa Rica. Well, you all know I go, maybe you don't. I go to Costa Rica every January. I'll be going this January 2016 as well, my 5th time. Well, a couple of years ago, while I was there, my personal growth and development workshop for a week in the western side of Costa Rica. It's a little peninsula. It's one of the blue zones of the world. There are only 5 blue zones. And this particular place, the Blue Zone, by the way, is a place in the world where you've got more people over 100 years per capita than any other place. It's a beautiful place. So in the work of the week, the people who run these workshops, they give us one day off to do whatever we want to do. So at the age of 67, I decided to go zip lining. And I went on the longest zip line on the Western Hemisphere, maybe even the world. 18 runs, or 18 zips, 3 miles. Exhilarating. You're flying high above the mountain tops in Costa Rica, I mean really high. You have to climb up and then get to a platform and then you zip. You go to the other side and then you climb a little bit more, move to another platform and zip again. Now, I am not a physical person. You know, I'm not out there running or walking or doing exercise, so I'm not a particular athletic type person. So when I signed up for this, there was a little bit of concern, you know, a little bit of nervousness about, could I do this, you know? But I was still looking forward to this great new adventure. There was another woman there also in the workshop that week, and we were sitting around the pool, and I was talking about how I was kind of looking forward to this, but just a little bit, you know, anxious about it. And she says, "Oh, I'm going too, but I'm petrified." I said, "Why are you going?" "Well, my son dared me to go, and I have to prove to him that I can do it." So she and I, along with like 18 other people, were, you know, we left the place early in the morning so that we could go zip lining before it got very hot. We're in the jungle now. The zip lining takes place in the jungle. And so we could start by 9 o'clock. So I had a wonderful time. She was terrified the whole time, held on to her guide for every single zip. You know, like when you do tandem jumping and you have a person you're holding on to. Well, the same thing can happen with zip lining. You can do it by yourself or you can hold on to your guide. She held on to her guide and the whole time and never go. I loved the experience. She did not. Same event, different stories. Same event, different experiences. Our stories, what we tell ourselves, determine how we experience the event, how we feel about it, and how we will act. The story becomes the event. Think about that. What you tell yourself becomes the reality of the event. So how do we do this? How can we create our stories? What do we do? Well, everything that happens to us happens through our 5 senses, the sense of taste, touch, sight, sound, and smell. So the sensory perception generates some kind of feeling in our body. We are wired to feel something, whether it's something in your gut or your hands, whatever. You literally think of a physical sensation when you are going through an experience. This feeling, this physical sensation, whatever it is from the 5 senses that we are involved in as we're going through this event, triggers a thought, which then we identify as an emotion that we then label as happy or sad or good or bad or whatever. So we have a physical sensation, we have a thought about that sensation, that thought becomes the emotion, and the emotion we label, favorable, unfavorable, good or bad, whatever emotion it is. So our emotions are the labels and thoughts we give to our physical sensations, that is, our feelings. When we do this, we look at the events through that prism of our emotions. We start assigning meanings to our experiences. But think about this. Anything that's happened, your drive over here this morning, the breakfast that you had, what happened last night, anything that you actually go through in your life is an event. It's outside of you. But as you look at it, you feel something. As you feel something, you think about it. As you think about it, you assign it an emotion, and that then becomes the event. And what happens is by assigning meanings to our experiences and interpreting them as either good or bad, these meanings becomes the fabric of our lives. We look at our life through the prism of the emotions that we assign. What does this mean? Is that you choose the emotions that you experience in your life. People don't think so. This happened to me, and this is how I felt about it, and this is it. You made it up, kids. You made up the emotions based on your perceptions. So you assign whatever emotion you had to the feeling. The feeling is real. The feeling is a physical sensation, but it has no meaning until you give it a label. So we create all of these meanings to our events that becomes the fabric of our lives, and then we decide whether we have a good life, a bad life, ups and downs, whatever it is. Now, there are 2 types of interpretations. There are those that empower us and those that disempower us. Here's an example. 2 sisters were routinely abused by their father growing up. One of the sisters eventually turned to drugs, didn't finish school, became homeless, and went from one abuse relationship to another. The other sister went on to college, had a successful career, and was in a loving relationship with someone who cherished her. Both women were interviewed on national television, and when asked the question, "How did you end up where you are today?" their response was the same. "After everything I went through and everything I endured, how could I have turned out differently?" The moral of the story is simply this: we always have a choice on how we interpret the events and circumstances in our lives. We can focus on all that went wrong, which leads to more pain and suffering, or we can choose to look at what went right and find the gifts that will lead us to more joy, happiness, and fulfillment. You know of people who seem to always have bad luck. It's like the world is against them, they think. The reality, from my perspective, is they create their own bad luck. They get stuck in a cycle of only looking at the bad things, and they make choices that are not empowering, choices that do not lead them out of that hole they keep digging themselves into. Then you also know people who seem like, oh, they're blessed, everything seems to go their way. The reality is that all of us experience good and bad. We experience different events. I like to say that pain in life is unavoidable, but suffering is optional. We all have some kind of emotional or physical or psychological pain that comes out of an event in our lives, whether it's divorce or a death or life-threatening illness or a change of job or being fired, whatever it is, or financial crisis. But how we get through that makes the difference between whether we're just surviving or thriving. Whether we're willing to start a new day in a different way. And just I want you to think about it for yourself. What is your life story? How are you seeing the world? How are you interpreting the events in your life? Are you moving towards empowerment or moving towards disempowerment? When we interpret our life experiences as negative or disempowering, we form limiting beliefs about ourselves. These limiting beliefs may look like, here's a couple of examples, I'm not good enough. I could never do that. I don't deserve happiness. I'm a failure. I'm unlovable. Now you may think that these kinds of thoughts only happen to people as they were growing up. You can be 75 and still have these thoughts. You could be 25 and have these thoughts. Age has nothing to do with how you interpret your life. It is more about what you've learned, how you take your experiences, what you're taught. It is a choice. If I do not believe that people have choices in their lives, no matter what age they're in, about what skills and how to experience life, I would not be in the business of adult education. I just got back, what's today, Sunday, so Friday night, from Reston, Virginia, where I was teaching a class to 10 different people in the IT profession on public speaking. How to get up in front of a group of people and present a topic. The week before, I was in Kansas City working with the National Council of, it's NCUA. It's like for credit unions, and there were 20 people in my class in Kansas City. And I was teaching communication skills. I literally traveled 2 or 3 weeks out of a month, someplace in the country, to teach people about the interpersonal skills. So I know and I have seen people of different ages, mostly their 20s to 50s, because it's still in the working world and that's who goes to my trainings. But occasionally I get someone who is over 70 or someone who is under 20. And no matter what the age is, people have negative or positive experiences of their events that they interpret. And you can be older and still feel unlovable or a failure and constantly try to strive but keep judging yourself because you have that little inner voice telling you that you're not good enough. Because no matter what age we are, we still have an inner child. And if we don't heal that inner child, the inner child will throw tantrums and they will guide and take over your life. So growing up is not about growing old. Growing up is about acknowledging who you are and recognizing that you create your own life. You make your own choices. And those choices determine what roads you will take and what other choice you will take. I like to talk about the Alice in Wonderland. I don't know if I've used this anecdote here before, but you know the story of Alice in Wonderland. She goes down the rabbit hole chasing the rabbit, right? So whether you've read the book or seen the Disney movie, but you have heard of Alice in Wonderland. So Alice goes down the rabbit hole chasing that elusive rabbit, and she comes to a fork in the road. And she looks up, and there is the Cheshire cat, the one with the big smile. She looks at the cat and says, "I'm lost, help me." And the cat says, "Well, where are you going?" She says, "I don't know, I'm lost, tell me where to go." And he wisely says, now I am paraphrasing, wisely says, "If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there." So knowing your own purpose, your destiny, you are the person who decides what your life is going to be. And we can make course corrections at any time, So we have these limiting beliefs that we carry with us, no matter how old we are, and we haven't exercised them or dealt with them. What happens is that we start then avoiding anything or anyone that might cause us to experience any negative emotions, or that what we decide are any negative emotions, uncomfortable emotions. We self-sabotage in an attempt to protect ourselves from unpleasant emotions, which then we decide this is the unpleasant event, so I'm not going to be there. And so those limiting beliefs keep us stuck in the same story, month after month, year after year. So you can choose to have an empowering story and see the good and the positive and move in that direction, in that fork in the road. Or you can choose to only look at the negative and choose that fork in the road and get stuck. And when you do that, when you look at the negative, not only are you kind of unhappy, it may give everyone around you unhappy. You know, who wants to hang around somebody who's always complaining, having problems? You want to help, you give little advice, you talk, you empathize, but you know, a year later, you know, it's old. 6 months later, it's old. So you can alienate people if you get stuck yourself. You want people like to hang around people who make them feel good. See, because emotions, we found out scientifically, are contagious. Here we are, we make up our own emotions. In other words, we label our emotions, but they're also contagious. When you're around people who are angry, don't you kind of get angry too? People who are cheerful, you kind of get light in the mood yourself. So emotions are contagious, but they're also transitory. So they come and go like waves. So that's empowering to know, at least for me, that we can choose how we feel about an event and therefore decide what action we're going to take, because our thoughts determine our actions. Any behavior you do was first a thought. And that's what I tell my classes, is that if you want to change the way your life is, if you want to change the results in your life, you have to change the paradigm, your thoughts of how that event is impacting you. So because we believe that our interpretations and the meanings we give to our experiences are the real deal, the truth, the way it happened, we get stuck. So, what if the story we tell ourselves are only interpretations? What if, as the authors of our stories, we can change the narrative at any time? When we hold on to our story, our particular story, as the only reality, we prevent ourselves from learning and growing. We become inflexible, rigid in our thinking, and unable to see other possibilities. If we want to change our lives and our destiny, we need to consciously change our story. One of the things that I tell my classes is, you come into my class, no matter what it is, whether I'm teaching emotional intelligence or public speaking or communications or influence skills, I want people, when they come to my classes, to wake up. One of the things I say is, when you leave here after 3 or 4 days of spending all day with me, you're going to be awake and aware. Because we go through life asleep. We go through life through habitual patterns without thinking. Now that's because our brain is an efficient organ. It doesn't like to waste time. It doesn't want to reinvent the wheel. So it just goes for the shortest cut to get to where it wants to go. So it will do things over and over again. That way you can do things without thinking. But if those things that you do without thinking are not producing the positive results in your life, it's time to wake up. So that when you choose your actions, you can decide which way to go. So we want to be able to say, look, I am interpreting this event X. Maybe I need to interpret this event Y. I gave you 2 examples of my tripping zip line in Costa Rica and the 2 sisters with the same parents, the same family background. Different stories, different interpretations, different experiences. There is the parable of the 6 blind men and the elephant. Has anybody heard of that one? Yeah, okay. Yeah, see, I bring this up in my classes and 99.9% of the people have not heard of it because I think it's a Sufi story, it's an older parable. Well, there are 6 blind men and there's this elephant. So you just picture this elephant and there are 6 blind men. Each man is convinced that they know exactly what an elephant looks like. The first one says, oh, the elephant is like a wall, it's high and wide, and the only way to get to the other side is over it or around it. No, 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 says the second blind man. The elephant is like a tree, I can hug it, it's rough from the bark. No, 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 says the third blind man. The elephant is like a big frond of a leaf, and I can fan myself with it. No, 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 says the other blind man. The elephant is like a rope. I can tie it, it's flexible, and so forth. So each of these men, remember they're blind, thinks that they know exactly what an elephant looks like, but they're only seeing part of the elephant. Don't be like the blind men and think that your reality is the only reality. There are many realities out there. Are you choosing the reality that works for you? Are you choosing the reality that empowers you? Or are you limiting yourself? It's your choice. It is your life. It is the journey. We all know we're going to die. But what are you doing with that dash in between? How are you empowering your life in a way that when you are coming to the end of your life, whatever the last breath is, it's a life worth lived. It's a life that you feel proud about. So, let's look at what we can do to able to change our stories, because we want to be able to see something new. We want to change the way we think and feel. If we choose to, then we can change the events in our lives. So instead of seeing, here's one thing, instead of seeing an unsurmountable problem in front of you, or an obstacle, you saw a challenge. Instead of getting angry over a perceived slight, you feel indifferent. Instead of seeing the end, you see a new beginning. We are always at choice in how we interpret everything in our lives. You all know that I had broken ankle. That was about 4 years ago. It was painful. It got in the way of me, doing what I want to do all on a regular basis, and I was out of work for 6 weeks. And I took that time to do things that I would not normally do. Kind of a little relax, even though there were days when I go, this is really a pain, physically and lots more. But you kind of get over that and move on. And I did not let it stop me from moving on and continuing my life. Some of you may know that I had colon cancer about 3 years ago. And I have half of the insides taken out. But I'm still out there. I healed, I moved on. And I'm not the only one these kinds of things. All of you, you've had your own problems, your own concerns. But how you get through them is the key piece what we're looking at. So you want to The question is, how do you rewrite your life story, no matter where you are in your life, whatever age you are? So I'm going to give you 5 tips, 5 little hints to make that happen. Number 1, notice the feeling, physical feeling you're experiencing right now. Notice where your body is. Notice where you hold your stress. Notice what feels good. Notice what muscles may feel tight. Maybe it's your stomach or your back or your thighs or your ankles or your legs. Just notice your body. Notice the feeling. Now, notice what kind of label you give to that feeling. Could you possibly give it another label, another emotion? Could you feel something different than what you're experiencing right now? So when you're going through an event that you are thinking, oh, this is a big one, stop, and notice your body. I call it a body check. If you want an example. The light. Oh, I know, I'm standing on the quick thing that turns it on and off. And one of, this was I think last year when I was in Costa Rica, and this is a beautiful place, and it's up in the mountains, and it's very rustic, but it's also very nice. I'm into, fancy rustic, I rough it by staying at a cheap motel. Okay, so this was fancy rustic, but that means is that there are stepping stones because this place is in the mountains. It's not handicap friendly at all. So I had just come out of a wonderful massage, outside with, there was some drapes, and the drapes were billowing in the wind as I was getting my massage. So I was feeling really good, and I was coming out. And I was going through some steps, and I had brought my cane because I knew that every once in a while, not my ankle, but I'm starting to get arthritis in my left knee. So every once in a while, my knee would kind of bother me. So I brought my cane so I could kind of help me as I was going through these steps. Well, I guess I was so relaxed and so dependent on feeling so confident on my cane that I, of course, misstepped. I fell backwards, banged my head right on a stone, right on a big thing, and felt the weight of everything just hit my left side. So I fall back and I go, oh, blankety blank. This is only like the second day of a 7-day stay. I know this place is not friendly to people who can't walk. So, but what I did first, because I felt, I thought, okay, just lay here, let me do a body check. Is anything bleeding? Because I thought I had, hit my head so hard that I had all this blood coming. Well, no, I touched my head. It was just a big bump and no blood. I could tell the bump was going to get big. I kind of checked my elbow, my knee, whatever it was, and did a quick body check and realized, okay, I'm not terribly hurt. I'm more upset that I fell than physically hurt. And then I started to get up. And then at that time, a couple of people saw me and they come to help me, get up and walk back to the main area of the place. But that's what I'm calling about body check. Check to see what's going on with my body. What do I need to do? So I could have interpreted that fall, as horrible as going to affect the rest of as a matter of fact, somebody said, are you going to complain? Are you going to sue? No, I'm okay. I'm not going to do anything that would mar my rest of my stay. It's very peaceful. I don't want to go into anything like that. And of course, because I had that perspective, it really did not hurt more than 24 hours, and after that I was fine. So here is the first step, is to notice the feeling, notice your body, the interpretation you're giving to that feeling, and ask yourself a question. Is there another possible feeling that I can have to this event right now? 2, what words are you using to describe the event? What words are you using? This is very important. The words that you form in your mind determine how you will physically behave. So what are the words that you're using to describe this event? And how are these words making you feel? You know that people come up to you and say, oh, isn't that terrible? So you go, oh, yeah, it's terrible. We are very susceptible to suggestions from others, and we are very susceptible to suggestions from our own self. So what are you doing to suggest an unpleasantness instead of a neutral to pleasant? So number 2, notice the words that you are using to describe the event. Number 3, does the event seem familiar? Are you reacting to a memory of a past event, not the event that is happening now? A lot of things that we experience, the kind of interpretations we give, is because we have kind of gunny-sacked or hoarded emotions around other events. And remember, our brain is very efficient. It doesn't want to reinvent this. Oh, that reminds me of the time that I fell and this, and this. Oh, this is similar to that. I felt that way. I feel that way now. We do that to ourselves. It's so much easier than trying to figure out something more different, because that takes energy. It takes creativity, and we're lazy. Our brain is lazy. Our brain wants to be efficient. So why not just hook to a past event that we've got back there and assign the same feeling and our thoughts to that event that we're experiencing now, instead of seeing the event for its first time. We do this, think about it, when you are with a colleague, and I'm saying at work, or a family person, or a friend, and they start talking to you, and you go, oh, I know what they're going to say. I've known this person for 15 years, and you just tune out. You do not hear them, or are not in the moment, and you are assigning to this conversation and this event historic stuff, and not really there. Well, that's not fair. They may be saying the same thing, but this is the new moment right now. Why not experience it fresh? You have had, the analogy that comes to mind right now is we all drink water. But the glass of water you have now is not the glass of water you had this morning or yesterday. It's still water, but it's new water. So it's a new event, a new conversation. Yes, it has similarities to the old. But because it's a new one, you can choose how that new conversation is going to go. You do not have to be a prisoner of the past. So make sure that you're not reacting to a memory of the past, but that you are acting and choosing to the event that's happening right now. Number 4, who else is in your story? Remember, the story is the narrative that you're giving to yourself, and maybe you verbalize it to others about what is going on in your life, the event. And all of these little events create lots of stories, and that story becomes, that narrative becomes the thread of the fabric of your life. So the life story is made up of all these little stories, okay? So who else is in your story? And what role have you given them? What role have you given yourself in this story? Are you the victim? Oh, you won't believe what so-and-so did. Oh, and I just had to do. So all of a sudden you have kind of the world on your shoulders, and poor you, you're the victim of all this negative reaction from this other person. Or you were the hero. If it wasn't for you, the office would not have anybody who remembers everybody's birthday. If it wasn't for you, your husband or wife could not function. Because after all, you know what's best. No matter how long you've been living together, whether, yep, you gotta do it this way, because I know best. So what role have you given yourself, the victim, the hero, the rescuer? And you all know about, people who are enablers, who think they're really giving love, but what they're doing is enabling the dysfunction of the other person. So what role have you given yourself? What role have you given others? Can you switch those roles around? Can you come up with different roles? Okay, so who else is in your story and what role have you assigned to them? Number 5. Where is the event taking place? Where are you? Notice your surroundings. Notice how those surroundings trigger whatever for you. Notice what you can do again to change the emotion of the event or the story around that. So here's the big one about number 5. You're noticing where you are. Then I'd like you to step outside of your body. I know this is kind of woo-woo-like. And be an observer. So a role you can play in that event is, oh, there was Carmen and she fell down. So notice, without any attribution to what's going on. So if you watch it as an observer, and you see that event with that possibility, since I am not emotionally involved, it means I am outside of the event as an observer, I can then think and offer other possibilities for that event. It's like when I tell people, what's the difference between sympathy and empathy? People say, oh, sympathy is about, feeling sorry or loss. It's more than that. Sympathy is feeling the other person is feeling. Empathy is understanding the feeling but not feeling it yourself. So, if you're an observer, you can be empathetic. Oh, there she is falling on the ground. Or there she is, people are yelling, whatever it is. You watch it, but you do not have an emotional attachment to it. You understand it. But then think, what else could be a different way of looking at that event? What other possibilities may be able to show up in that event? Because as an observer, it's like being empathetic. You understand the situation, but you are not judging it as good or bad. It is neutral, so therefore there are other possibilities that will show up for you. And then you can decide, okay, I have 3 or 4 different possibilities here. Which one is empowering for me? Which one will work for me? Which one will keep me on the road of happiness and joy and fulfillment? And which ones are going to get me stuck in the same old that I've been doing all my life? So 5 things, and it's all about being awake and aware. It's all about recognizing yourself and seeing yourself as the creator of your life. The creator of your life stories. You can change your life no matter what age you are. Because when you stop changing, we do all the time. In our cells, in our bodies change. They're not the 20-year-old bodies, right? Not even, if we're past 50, they're not even the 50-year-old bodies. So you are always changing already physically. We know that through nature. Nature changes all the time. We can change our emotions. We can change our thinking. So you can change your life. You are the author of your life. When we stop changing, we physically die. That's what death is. No more change. Change stops. So why accelerate that death while your body is still alive? Live in the moment. Live in the present. Knowing that you are the creator of your own story allows you to create a more powerful story, a more compelling, beautiful life. So I leave you with this question. What story are you creating about your life?